Welcome back to the morning show. Thank you so much for staying with us on this Workers' Day. Now, this is a day that has been officially recognized and observed since the first democratic elections here in South Africa back in 1994. And obviously, this is not just a day that is observed just here in South Africa, but across the globe. And it aims to celebrate and reflect on workers' rights. And it's a reminder of the critical role that trade unions and other labor organizations played in the fight against apartheid. Joining us this morning to speak to us about the day, the significance, as well as its relevance, we're joined by Cosatu's Matthew Parks. Matthew, thank you so much for joining us on this Workers' Day. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
I guess we'll start by saying happy Workers' Day. I do know you probably have a very busy day ahead of you. But one of the things, Matthew, that I think we should start on and touch on is the relevance of this particular day. I mean, we've just celebrated Freedom Month and Freedom Day. And as we took to the streets, for instance, to speak to ordinary South Africans about what they think is the relevance of the day and why they should be celebrating it, we got the sense that a lot of South Africans have lost hope. So when we're looking at a day like Workers' Day that seeks to celebrate some of the strides that are made within the labor movement, what would you say is the relevance of this particular day?
Sure. Look, this day is important because it's one day which is dedicated to recognizing workers, their contribution to society, and the difficulty they face, and how it's critical to improve the conditions workers are experiencing at the workplace, at home, and in society. Workers' Day started, 140 years ago in Chicago, when workers were shot for protesting against exploitative, horrific working conditions. Since that time, it's been used by workers across the world, and including South Africa, even during the liberation struggle against apartheid, to say workers cannot accept being abused, to be treated like slaves, to be paid a pittance which they can't survive upon. Workers have the right to vent their grievances to government, to society, to the employer, and the right to demand a better life. So it's a chance for workers across South Africa, in Cosatu and across all federations and all unions, to say these are the conditions workers face. Domestic workers face sexual harassment in the workplace. Mine workers are dying every week in horrific conditions. Police officers too are being killed in the line of duty. Nurses are working under very difficult conditions trying to keep our hospitals running. Workers across the country are really struggling. Workers at Macro are being dismissed for simply demanding living wage and for exercising their right to join a trade union. So it's about saying these are the challenges workers are facing. This is what we need to do to make it better for workers. A chance for Cosatu to go back to its members, to workers, and say, over the past year we've managed to improve the Employment Equity Act, or the National Minimum Wage, or the compensation for occupational injury on duty for domestic workers, and so forth. It's a chance to rejuvenate workers, to really dedicate ourselves and to say, for the next year, these are our demands, this is how we're going to keep pushing. So it really is a chance to reflect and to go back to the battlegrounds, to continue to fight to improve workers' lives.
And I mean, Matthew, we hear these buzzwords almost every single day when, Workers' Day arrives, where we're talking of the reflection on the plight of workers and the fact that workers are being exploited. And this keeps happening. And one wonders then if this is not just a talk shop, if we're not just having Workers' Day celebrations just for the sake of having them. I mean, if trade union membership in South Africa is falling and currently stands at about 23%, what then would you say is the relevance of trade unions, and why do you think that these numbers are sitting where they are currently, if really trade unions have such a significant role to play in the lives of workers?
Yeah. Well, the fact that we have a public holiday for Workers' Day is because of the trade unions, because Cosatu fought for it. This holiday did not exist before 1994, like many of our other public holidays. The fact that we have many more progressive labor laws shows the value of the trade unions, because those are not given to workers on a silver platter. Those are the product of struggles over many, many years by workers, by trade unions, by Cosatu, and so on, over the past year, because we can't also just rely upon the victories we have achieved in 1994 or after that. Over the past year, we can show that the minimum wage has been increased to 25 rand an hour. That's a significant increase to what it was for domestic workers when it was 15 rand in 2019, to farm workers when it was 18 rand an hour in 2019. So there's positive improvement there. We've strengthened the Employment Equity Act this year. The President signed it about 2 weeks ago, requiring that any company which wants to do business with the state has to be in compliance with the Minimum Wage Act and the Employment Equity Act. So we're putting power to enforce the laws. Domestic workers were not covered when they were injured at the workplace until recently. The President now, under our request and pressure, signed the Corridor Amendment Act to now say that domestic workers are now covered for when they're injured at the workplace. These are not miracles overnight. They take time. It's because workers come together, they form trade unions, they join Cosatu, Cosatu is able to push it. But like all other struggles, including the struggle to liberate South Africa, including the struggle to end slavery, racism, and so forth, colonialism, and so forth, none of these struggles happen overnight. They all took significant effort over many, many years. Doesn't mean we must be satisfied with it. Because the fact is, workers are still having huge levels of unemployment at 42%. Workers are still drowning in debt and so forth. So also say, what are we doing going forward? Well, right now we're engaging with Treasury. Treasury has agreed to our demand as Cosatu to allow workers who are drowning in debt, which is most workers across the economy, to have early access to the pension funds. So we now have a law before Parliament, which will pass, we hope, by the end of this year, that from the 1st of March next year, workers will be able to access 1/3 of the pension funds the 1st of March next year, and going forward, once a year, they can access the savings third of the pension funds. So we're looking at practical interventions to improve the lives of workers, because we can't simply expect government to do everything. We also cannot expect employers to take into account the interests of workers at all times. So it's not an easy road. Like with everything else in life, you have to push for what you want, and you have to fight for it if you really want it.
And today, Matthew, one of the things that you've asked workers to do is to come out in their numbers and march. And there is an expectation that there are going to be marches that are happening across 8 provinces. What do you expect will be, the impact that these marches have, particularly today? And what message are you hoping to be driving?
Sure. Basically, the message that we want to drive to all employers, to be in the public or the private sector, is that workers are frustrated by the levels of corruption. They're angry with the levels of unemployment. Workers are no longer willing to accept to be paid a slave wage wherever they work. Workers expect the employer to recognize their right to join a trade union, to respect collective agreements, to negotiate in good faith. There's a chance for workers to show that they are united. It doesn't matter what color our t-shirts are, whether we're from Cosatu or from other trade union federations. It doesn't matter who we vote for on election day, because the challenges facing all workers, black and white, in the rural areas, in the cities, essentially they are the same. There's a chance for workers to say, these are the key things we're going to push for over the next year: the access to pension funds, to see how can we reduce unemployment, how can we support locally produced goods, how can we accelerate the fight against corruption, how can we put pressure on municipalities to fail to pay their workers on time. All these different issues, we're going to say that these are the issues we're going to push for next year, because you can't just simply complain. You have to say, what are the actual practical things you want? How are you going to make sure they happen going forward to improve workers' life? Because we're not coming together simply to commiserate and to lament, but it's coming together to say we're frustrated, we're angry, but here's a clear program of action, and this is how we're going to implement it over the next 12 months and beyond.
And I mean, Matthew, before I let you go, today is very significant also because there is a new trade union that is going to be launched, the Workers' Socialist Union of South Africa. This was, of course, established by former student leaders and EFF members. And they say part of the reason is because they want to restore the dignity of working people across all sectors of society. And this was really just inspired by the fact that workers at Wits University used to come to them with their issues, whether it is long working hours, whether it is leave days, all the issues that they had, they would go to them as opposed to going to the unions that they represented. But clearly this means that the unions were not adequately doing their work and not adequately representing these workers. What does this say to you as an existing trade union when there's new unions that are being formed to do precisely what you do? Do you feel like unions are being weakened?
Yeah. So look, I think the positive message is that we need to do better. All unions need to do better. As long as workers face huge challenges of corruption, of abuse in the workplace, sexual harassment, poverty wages, whatever the challenge they face, then we need to do better as trade unions to try to address those issues. That's why unions exist. We have to keep pushing better. We shouldn't rest on our past victories or shouldn't become complacent. It is good to have competition, but having said that, one of the biggest challenges for workers is to have a fragmentation of the trade union movement. We currently have over 200 trade unions. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Because the more we are fragmented, the more we are divided, the weaker we become. A trade union of 200 members or 500 members is not going to make much difference. You need to have strong numbers together, because that's in the unity of numbers. When workers are united together, that's how we're able to push things through. That's how unions in the public service, in the private sector, in the clothing industry, the retail sector are able to push things through. Look at Sibanye. when the workers went on demand and went on strike because the employer refused to give them an additional 50 rand a month increase, AUM, NUMSA, UASA, Solidarity, AMCU, all these unions came together in different stages across different mines. Same thing with ESCOM. So it showed the value of workers when united. So for us, we think it's possible the workers want to join a trade union, but we would encourage them rather to join an established trade union, not a political front, which, to be honest, this one sounds like it. We've seen many of them come, they exist for a few months, they disappear. That doesn't help workers' cause. It's better that we address the weaknesses that exist in some of the unions, and it's better that we see how can we bring these unions together to unite, because Cosatu's always had a core of having one federation for one country, one union for one industry. That's when workers are going to be strong. But we are also confident that, yes, it might not seem high when only 27% of workers in South Africa belong to trade union, but when you look across the world, it's actually quite high. Our numbers have not been decreasing. In fact, they've been starting to increase, including in Cosatu, and that's a positive thing. We've also seen many unions coming closer together in Cosatu, outside of Cosatu, say, we might be from different federations, we might have different political views, that's fine, it's part of democracy, but we can agree on how we need to protect workers, how we need to work together. That's how we're going to improve workers' lives, by being united as a trade union movement.